Guys, you see the screen now, okay?
Yes, we see it.
Yes, we're seeing it.
Yeah. I'm gonna double check on the setting later because I think something went wrong with the settings.
Okay, doctor.
Okay.
Okay.
So can anyone like remind me about what I said last lecture about comparative politics and the definition of comparative politics?
Yes, me.
Yeah, go ahead.
The comparative policy, we said that it mainly depends on comparing two countries, but according to what's happening inside it domestically.
Okay.
And at the end of the lecture, we mentioned that we don't fully depend on what's happening domestically, but we also depend on some things that may happen outside the country and influence it from the inside.
Yeah, in some circumstances, so the boundaries are not that rigid. So that's why we need to pay attention to some sort of interaction between what's happening domestically and the influence, you know, that that's coming from external sources. And I offered an example with the reference to what was going on in Syria and the prolonged civil war there, and the role of some regional actors or regional players like the Gulf countries, mainly Emirates and Saudi Arabia, and the role of Iran in supporting Bashar al-Assad. And we will talk more about this when we tackle the dependency theory. So with this theory, we're going to see how the integration into global market or the position in this global economy would affect the level of development and some sort of economic choices inside your country. Okay? So, yeah. So why do we compare? We need to understand the logic or the rationale behind doing comparative politics. Why should we compare? So firstly, I'm gonna go quickly. I'm gonna pass over, you know, this part, and then I'll talk more about the rationale and the logic of comparison next week when I address some methodological issues and methodological tools. So basically, here it's something related to. I need to make sure that. Yeah, here we go. Yeah. So actually, we need to, you might be interested in one particular case, and you need to deepen understanding about this case. So mainly like the emergence of insurgency groups in Latin America, in Nicaragua, for example. You need to investigate this particular case of Sandinistas as insurgency group there. So you need to unravel, you need to decipher this sequence of historical events there in order to make sure what would account for the continuity or the active role of these insurgency groups in relation to or in comparison to different insurgency groups in Latin America. So you need to deepen your understanding about these kind of historical sequence of particular events, and that's it. And another purpose, you might be interested in this, what we call complex causality. You need to uncover the causal mechanisms or the dynamics, how the Marxist ideology affects the action and the organization of these insurgency groups. Or you need to compare different authoritarian regimes that actually all faced some sort of economic crisis, and some of them managed to overcome this crisis efficiently and effectively, while others don't manage to do that. So you need, if you have a theory, you have already existing theory telling you that authoritarian regimes are much more efficient in handling economic crisis, and then in reality you have some empirical cases that said otherwise. So that's why you need to understand, you know, this complex relationship between the two variables, the regime type of like authoritarianism as a regime type, and the outcome variable of economic crisis. So And the main purpose is to evaluate or refine the existing theoretical frameworks or assertions. In this case, you may verify or falsify the existing theories or the existing theoretical emphases. Or you may be interested in collecting some facts from some observations from observable behavior, and then you need to build your own theory or your own theoretical framework. So in this way, you conduct some sort of inductive logic of building arguments from collecting, this facts from micro level or observational level, and then you come up with this after testing your hypotheses. You come up with this broad or abstract statement, which is your new theoretical emphasis or assertion. I'm going to talk more about this next lecture, don't worry, but for now, this is like basic methodological foundation I need to make sure that you all get it properly. Or you might need to, what we say, to make kind of a causal inference. So you might be interested in this particular case, like some Arab countries, they faced severe economic crisis. Some authoritarian regimes in the Arab region faced severe economic crisis, and they managed to overcome this crisis effectively. So you might be interested in these cases, but also you are interested in the general parameter of this issue. So you need to make kind of Nisma?
Doctor, can you
yeah
Doctor, هو أنا مش نسمة بس can you give us an example for these Arab countries, authoritarian Arab countries?
Okay, like Syria, for example. If the Bashar, is facing a severe economic crisis after the war, okay, some budget constraints or physical constraints. I'm still explaining this, by the way.
Okay.
So you might be interested in this case, okay, like Syria, how Bashar is managing to endure or sustain his authority or power. But at the same time, you are in your head, you're interested in this like a theme or this thematic topic, generally speaking. So you need to make an inference, meaning you need to understand from the facts about the Syrian cases, you need to understand some other states or countries or regimes that you actually did not examine. So from what from facts you need to understand something about facts that you do not know. So perhaps like after like close or in-depth examination of these cases, you come up with not only Syria, you have to do like some comparative cases in order to have this sort of general statement or theoretical statement. So perhaps after examining Egypt, Syria, Yemen, Tunisia, and then you make an inference that perhaps when there is some sort of existential threat existing in society, so perhaps like different elements in society. Aya?
Doctor, could you speak somewhat slowly?
Slowly, yeah, okay. I'm going to repeat, okay? So I'll try to slow down the pace, but I'm going to repeat if you don't understand something, okay?
Okay.
The thing is, I don't see you. If we have like physical interaction, it would be much easier for me to slow down the pace or to have like proper communication or interaction with you guys. But for now, it's like I'm gonna like repeat this again next week, by the way. But for now, I just make sure that you understand what inference means or what causal inference is. So from these cases, you need to make this generalization or to come up with this abstract statement or theoretical statement about when there is kind of existential threat in particular societies like Islamist or like terrorist in the case of Syria, like ISIS, for example. So the society actually didn't pay much attention or didn't give priority to economic economic issues or economic domain. So that's why they did not, like social actors or citizens, they did not exert some sort of pressure on the existing authoritarian regimes to push for any kind of reform, social reform, because they had another priority, which is like restoring stability or purging the country of fundamentalist or in armed groups. So from these kind of general statements or this kind of theoretical emphasis you came up with your like investigation or examination of some Arab countries, so you make like this inference, perhaps in other countries, when there is kind of existential threat, when these societies face existential threat, so people actually do not pay much attention to social and economic matters. They do care about their physical security and their lives mainly. Okay? Guys?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
doctor.
Yes, doctor.
Yeah, okay, doctor.
Okay. Or maybe you need to control for different variables. What do I mean by controlling? This is like a methodological step as well. So by having so many or too many cases, so if you have like one theoretical assertion, for example, about the economic crisis and efficient authoritarian regimes in tackling this, you have like one dynamic or one mechanism says, you know what, because they are not like authoritarian leaders are not accountable for the republic, or they don't have any accountable representative institutions like the parliament that they just rubber stamp their decisions. So they don't need to go through this kind of complicated or longer processes or steps in order to issue laws or decisions in order to handle the crisis. So it's overnight, they can take like, one quick decision without bothering about publics, the reaction of the citizens or the reaction of some representative institutions in their countries. But you came up with different theoretical assertion about, this existential threat thing. But you need to compare between different cases. Like, for example, if you need to make sure that you can generalize, you can reach, this with some degree of certainty. So you need to examine like other cases, like in Latin American cases, for example, they faced the same existential threats. So that's why you control for, it's very difficult for one case to vindicate your theory, because there are so many variables that would account for this complex causality, like decision-making process, like the social composition, the positionality in the international system or the international, the global market or the international market. So there are too many variables. So by comparing or adding some more cases, so you kind of control for these variables, like economic structure, position in global economy, like the process or the dynamics of decision making, the ruling elites, the composition of the ruling elites, degree of autonomy or the intensity of conflict between these this elite circle. So you control for all these variables in order to qualify one variable, which is your existential threat, in order to say that the intensity of this existential threat leads to or would account for the efficiency by which authoritarian regimes manage to handle or to address the economic crisis efficiently. Okay?
Okay.
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 So that was the definition and the purpose. I think someone is saying something. Anyone wants to say something?
I have a question. Yes.
Yeah.
I have a question. Does the inference and control are somehow related to each other?
It's highly integrative. Yeah. It's kind of when I'm gonna talk about this next week. But anyway, like research design this is related to your research design, okay? And it's integrative process, so they are not separable, okay? So you have to come up with your comparative research design by controlling for like different variables in order to reach some sort of general theoretical statement or some sort of generalization. So depending on your research design, this will you can reach, like, you know, this by this large N or small N design, comparative design, and the tools you are going to use, so you can make different level, you can make this causal inference, but at different levels of certainty, okay?
Okay.
Yeah. So this is for now, it depends on your research design. You can reach like this level of generalization or general law, or kind of middle range theoretical assertions. So as I mentioned, the field actually has developed against the backdrop of different international events and the emergence of different intellectual movements. So these kind of historical events changed the scope of the inquiry of the field. What should political scientists examine? Should we focus on only legal institutions and formal institutions, or we should include different other issues or different levels of analysis? So before the Second World War, the main emphasis, as I mentioned last lecture, it was mainly on the formal and the legal institutions. So we need to investigate how the relationship between the president and the parliament, what kind of prerogatives that are stipulated in the particular constitutions, and the main emphasis or the main focus of the comparative design was mainly Western democratic countries. So they had like this sort of false sovereign states and this sort of democratic and capitalist developments. So it was kind of Eurocentric idea about doing comparative politics, because back then, except for like, you know, the Middle Eastern countries and this kind of fierce competition between different European countries over overseas colonies. So there, you didn't have like, you know, too many countries, you know, to investigate. Like Sub-Saharan Africa and the Middle East, they were subject or they were under the influence of some colonial power in a way or another. So that's why the main focus was mainly on these formal and legal institutions and constitutional designs, and mainly on this Western democratic and developed nations. So it was a very narrow range of issues you can, like comparativists did investigate during that period. And then after the Second World War, after some empirical or some historical events happened, like the rise of fascism and Nazi regimes in Germany and Italy. Some European countries went into like devastating wars. After the Second World War, some national liberation movements emerged in order to lead the struggle for independence in Africa and in the Middle East and North Africa. So that's why like political scientists and most especially comparativists, they did pay attention to these new issues and these new areas of inquiry. So that's why it led to like the nourishment or the Nurhan, you want to say something?
Doctor, there is a problem in, I can't hear you.
Nurhan or who? Guys, you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So perhaps you have something with the connection.
Yes, doctor.
Yeah. Okay, so after the Second World War, so what happened was like the nourishment of this area studies. So you need to send scholars to Sub-Saharan Africa to understand how national liberation movements transformed themselves into one dominant party rules in these areas, or you need to investigate, you know, the social movements or the action of some trade unions in Latin America after the establishment of some sort of authoritarian regimes there. So many different topics actually did surface, and comparativists, they did pay attention, or they developed interest in investigating all these issues. So from these informal, from studying not only like formal institutions, but also these some sort of informal institutions, like why people vote for authoritarian parties, perhaps because they developed this informal institution of what's called patronage or clientelistic networks by offering some material or distributing some material benefits to their people. And then so people like they'd vote in order to derive, you know, some material benefits out of this, or perhaps of the issue of vote buying. So you need to understand these, not only the formal institutions, but also like these informal institutions would account for some sort of political dynamics and the relationship between different political actors.
Sorry, doctor, for interrupting you.
Yeah.
I want a doctor to explain the mix between Arabic and English because في حاجات كتير بحس إن هي بتقع مني. فممكن ولا؟
Sorry.
يا ريت يا دكتور، يا ريت.
يا ريت.
يا ريت
What?
بجد يا دكتور.
I can't hear you.
بقول حضرتك ان انا يعني حضرتك ممكن تشرحي لنا ميكس بين عربي وانجلش لان في حاجات بتقع مني.
كلنا يا ريت يا دكتور.
No, I can't. I really, no. I think if you know me, if you can ask me, you know, if you can ask like different students that graduated, I don't use Arabic. It's some sort. If I need to use some words or some translations, I can do this, but barely I do that. It's an English course.
طب بليز دكتور ممكن بالراحة
I can
شوية
slow
عشان
down.
نعرف ناخد.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I can slow down. But anyway, you don't need to write down any ideas. You will have all the lectures, you know, recorded and available for you on Blackboard later, and now on Google Drive. Okay. So don't get like over worried or worried over, you know, these kind of jotting down ideas. Okay.
Okay, doctor, thank you.
Okay. So you have like these informal institutions you need to examine, and all these and even players outside of the government arena or the domain of the formal institutions and the government institutions. And you may also need to understand power relations and dynamics. So the decision making or the decision makers are influenced by some interest groups as well, like how business associations and business people would influence the decision-making process in Tunisia or in Egypt, for example. So you need to understand, even like, you know, you need to pay attention to non-state actors, okay? Like you need to pay attention to some social forces that would account for different dynamics, social movements, interest groups, or how they would organize, you know, lobbying, or how they lobby in order to influence the decision-making process. So they actually broaden this scope of the range of the questions comparativists would examine or would answer, and they actually develop different levels of analysis. So from formal institutions to informal institutions, you can understand the functionality of these institutions in relation to different actors, and you can understand you need from these institutional level to behavioral level or micro foundational level. You need to understand why people engage in contentious behavior, why people vote for particular parties. You need to understand how ideational forces like Marxism or liberal or Enlightenment ideas would affect political behavior or political actions. Okay, so guys, after I finish, like after each section, don't interrupt me, so we can organize it somehow. After I finish, like, you know, a slide or one part, I can leave some room for you to ask your questions or to express your worries. Okay?
Okay, doctor.
Okay, so far, should I proceed and move on? Malak, I think. Malak?
Yes, I have a question, Doctor.
Yeah.
Do I need here to know only that our focus changed before the World War and after, or I need to know every step of this?
I'm coming. What do you mean by every step of this?
Yani, I need to memorize everything that in this slide, or I just need to know that there was a huge change in our focus before
Okay,
the World
guys,
War and
don't
after.
worry about the exam now, okay? Just understand, just try to understand what I'm saying, okay? And then when we get closer to the exams, I can tell you how to study, okay? Just understand, okay?
Okay.
So these kind of historical developments is related to in the with their implications, you know, for the study or the range of the questions comparativists they don't care about. It's pretty much related to I mean, like political scientists, especially in the subfield of comparative politics, they have been dreaming about reaching the somehow like this one theory that would interpret or examine everything in social and economic in social and political domains. So having or this dream of building a general theory or a general law that would interpret or examine or help us understand different social and political phenomena have been like one of the major concern in comparative politics or between political scientist community. I want to introduce, like, can anyone guess what do I mean by a paradigm? Like having one paradigm, like as political scientists, as scholarly community, having one paradigm to guide us while investigating and examining different phenomena.
Paradigm,
Okay, so
something with the silhouette that every political scientist moves inside to explain a social phenomenon or a political phenomenon, a repeated pattern.
Repeated pattern?
Yes.
can I add something?
Yeah.
It's like
Okay, so it's a kind of a belief or a thought that white people believe in it.
Okay.
It's the kind of an ideal,
yeah.
Something ideal that we reached and everyone should follow.
Yeah, it's
Ideal
more or
theory,
less.
for example.
Yeah, it's more or less. It's kind of a consensus among us as a community. What kind of questions we need to tackle? It's what kind of, you have like kind of a textbook with the tools we need to deploy in order to answer these questions. What kind of like these kind of general statement or theoretical assertion that would help us understand and investigate and examine a wide range of social and political phenomena. So I'll go back to this in the last week, but for now it's kind of a consensus or agreement among scholars or political scientists on how we address, you know, some questions, what kind of tools and what kind of theoretical assertion we need to follow in order to answer or to resolve, you know, all the puzzles related to political and social phenomena. Okay. So with this dream of having one general theory or a paradigm telling us, you know what, you should use these quantitative tools and large N studies. I will explain this in some detail next week. But for now, like, you have large N studies, you have some specific tools in order to bear on different subject matters, and with this kind of a theoretical model that would help you understand and investigate a wide range of social and political issues in different political environments or different political settings. So they had this dream, but this dream never they did never, you know, achieve or reach this level of like consensus to materialize, you know, this kind of scholarly consensus among one single community. So it's hard to speak of this coherent community amongst political scientists. So what happened, it was, you can speak of mainstream approach or mainstream theoretical assertions, but it's hardly a dominant one. And this is related to the development of the field with regard to the methodological tools, and the issues or the scope of the inquiry is related to the notion of scientific knowledge. What actually constitutes a scientific knowledge? And they made this distinction between hard science and soft science, this kind of polarity between hard science when you use like scientific tools like economic approaches to politics, if you use statistical analysis, mathematical models, computer simulation models, experimental studies. So you use these kind of hard tools in order to achieve, you know, this kind of this level of hard science. And then soft science, for now, it's kind of you are not that like obsessed about the idea of methodological tools. You are interested in analyzing or explaining some texts like Greek philosophy, like how norms and values would affect people's behavior by like doing ethnographic studies. You don't need to deploy, you know, this kind of ultra professional methodological tools in order to have it in order to produce scientific knowledge. And this dichotomy for many political scientists, it's related to this behavioral movement that emerged in the 50s and the 60s of the 20th century. And the American behavioral movement for so many political scientists, it proved it was some sort of it caused some sort of damage rather than or division amongst political scientists rather than like reaching this source of this sort of consensus among political scientists as a community. So according to this movement, the traditional approaches to political science as this kind of legality or constitutional approach to study particular institutions, these kind of traditional approaches and even the normative theories, it didn't make political science as a science in a proper sense. So what we need to examine, we need to examine only observable behavior, okay? So if you cannot observe and generate some sort of, you cannot test some sort of hypothesis against these observations, so this is not kind of knowledge or scientific knowledge you are going to produce. So only like observable behavior that you can subject, you know, to like severe or hard test in order to reach theoretical assertions or theoretical statements, this only would produce scientific knowledge. Other than that, like theology, religion, and mythology, they are not like scientific knowledge, because you cannot like subject, you know, all of these like facts or observations. They are not observable, you know, these kind of facts and statement you cannot subject to harsh test. So the movement emerged in the 50s and 60s and dominated the debates inside, you know, the community or of political science or their annual gatherings and annual conferences. But it had the movement had some philosophical and historical roots in logical positivism as its philosophical roots, or what's called like Vienna Circle in the early of the 20th century. So according to this, it became very popular in Germany and Britain. According to this, it's only if you can compare or test some facts against observations, and you can subject, you know, these facts to empirical tests, so you can produce this kind of scientific knowledge. So basically, you need to understand the behavior of institutions or different actors in the political domain, and you need to know this kind of test would verify or falsify your theoretical assertions. So by this kind of testing or empirical testing, you can you can prove yourself, you can know when something went wrong or when you are wrong. So you can make a statement which is falsifiable because of these kind of empirical tests. So this is the only way to conduct, you know, scientific research and to produce scientific knowledge. So accordingly, they had some pillars that would define what's called behavioral credo. So basically, knowledge is completely separable from action. So you have to produce value free. You don't bring your values or your own experience to your research. So it has to be value free. And with this kind of testing, it has to be totally impartial. And after I finish this, I'm going to take your questions. So in very objective and impartial way. So you do not bring any sort of political advocacy. You do not care about any kind of policy implications. So this kind of knowledge, the producing knowledge, is totally separable from your action and beliefs and values and norms. And this kind of empirical testing would allow you to verify or to falsify your theoretical assertions, and thereby you can make this kind of generalization. And by the way, from your observation, it has to be you are testing what takes kind of a pattern or regular pattern. So you examine regularities in order to reach this level of general law. And regarding the subject of investigation, not only formal institutions, you can also understand the behavior of informal groups and structures as well. But they don't pay attention to any kind of historical like a historical phenomenon. Like you don't care about, for example, like historical developments from particular one economic structure to another, social system to another. It's kind of a historical examination or empirical examination of some facts. And this is, we call it like deductive mode of or logic of building argument or producing knowledge. So you have, for example, the rational choice, utility maximizing self-interested agencies. You have this model, and from this model you derive, you know, some hypotheses in order to test. So why people get engaged in collective behavior or collective action. So you have this sort of they might drive some sort of interest, they might have their own logic or reason by involving in these kind of behaviors. So it gained kind of like, it's not dominance, but it gained some sort of popularity in the 50s and the 60s, but it doesn't mean that it didn't have any kind of philosophical roots or any kind of scientific works that actually started in the, or preceded, you know, these kind of behavioral movement in political science that actually happened in the early and late or throughout the 19th century, as I'm going to say, like Marx actually, and Marx's theory of historical development would consider as scientific produced scientific knowledge, because it aimed to show like regularities. What? Malak? Someone had his hands up.
لا, it's not me, doctor.
Okay. So basically, yeah, this is English course. Okay, so I'm not sure if you get used, you know, like to have like to this in other courses, like you have like an English course and professors, you know, would explain something in Arabic. I don't do that. So they have like even like comparative politics for the Arabic section. It's delivered in English as well. So basically, you need to reach this low, like so many like theoretical attempts that aim to building this law-like regularities and focused on this necessary relationships. From your introduction to political science, you studied political ideologies. how can Marxism or the Marxist theory of historical development or historical changes would fit into this scientific debate? Anyone? You studied political ideologies, right? The liberal, the Marxist, feminism, no?
Yes.
Yes, doctor, we
Yes,
studied.
doctor.
Yeah, okay. So regarding Marxism, how can Marxism fits into this debate? Anyone?
I think, you know, Marx had proposed some hypotheses, and those hypotheses were
Who's talking?
somehow Ahmed.
Oh, the name doesn't appear. Okay, Ahmed. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so as I've said, Marx had proposed some hypotheses, and those hypotheses were somehow correct in some countries like Russia at that time. So we could compare this and we could judge him.
Yeah, but again, what do I mean by scientific knowledge or general law? So what kind of general law the Marxist theory tells us?
I'm not quite sure about my answer, but
yeah, go ahead.
No, I can't provide no more answers.
Okay. Okay. So if you remember, it's like Marxist tradition, and Marx himself, he developed, you know, this theory of like historical development or historical changes. That's basically it's predicated on some sort of a structure and processes that define and shape human existence. Okay, and you as a political scientist or as a scholar, you need to uncover these structures and processes in order to understand the human existence or the human struggle in the world. So what made this scientific? The scientific principle he deploys, what's called, if you remember, this dialectical understanding of historical development, the dialect. Anyone can explain this? With the transformation from particular economic structure to another? Okay. So according to this principle, you can understand historical changes and historical development through this dialectical framework. So it's all about if you have these kind of contradictions between the thesis and antithesis, and this kind of interaction between the contradictions that emanated from the thesis would trigger a movement from antithesis in order to establish kind of a new thesis. For example, the contradictions in the capitalist system would lead to economic crisis, and this economic crisis with the class struggle would establish eventually this socialism and the dictatorship of the proletariats because of the struggle of labor class. So from the contradiction in the capital system, this would inevitably lead to economic crisis, and from this economic crisis they would lead to a new thesis, which is the socialist economic structure. So from this perspective, this theory of historical development and this scientific principle makes this actually makes any historic change travels across time and space. So the theory holds across time and space. So you cannot perceive history in its totality from this transition from one particular mode of production to another economic structure or another mode of production. But the thing is, the Marxist tradition, Marx and Marxist traditions, didn't separate knowledge from action, because it had this kind of, in order to end this exploitative nature of capitalism, so they had this value, or you need the knowledge of the historical change is not that separable from the action of giving emancipation or putting an end to exploitative structure. So the thing is, knowledge is not separate, it's not separated from action, and theory is not separated from practice as well, unlike, you know, the behavioral or the hardcore behavioral belief. And this actually triggered this kind of hardcore belief in objectivity and impartiality, triggered a counter movement from post-behavioral proponents. They actually, they still believe in like observable behavior and like testing against some observations, but they do believe in diversifying your methodological tools, for example, and you do need to be fully committed to this objectivity or the value-free science and value-free knowledge. And they introduced different idea that instead of committing yourself as a political scientist to they attain to be like a socialist, or to achieve, or to make, you know, this socialist path achievable or attainable, you as a political scientist, you can produce knowledge that this knowledge has some sort of relevance or policy implications. So you need to produce knowledge in order to enable decision makers or policy makers in order to improve on their economic decisions or political decisions or public policies. So you need to put your knowledge to work in order to improve and shape your society. So they introduced this idea of relevance without any sort of, so they rejected, you know, this pure notion of value-free science or the separation between value and knowledge, but at the same time, they liberated themselves from this kind of commitment to a particular course of action, which is political science is not necessarily a socialist and or a socialist of a particular kind, like a Marxist socialist, for example. So they actually liberated themselves from this idea, and they did believe in this interaction nature, or the difficulty of separation between knowledge and value, and it has to be some sort of it has some relevance to decision making or policy implications. So all the historical developments of the field of comparative politics in terms of what kind of questions, what kind of scientific tools or methodological tools, it's pretty much related to this notion of what makes like a field kind of scientific, what makes it a science, and how can we define politics? Is it reducible to only formal and legal institutions, or we can like broaden it a little bit in order to include different levels of analysis, like informal institutions and individual and group behavior? Any question? Any question, guys?
Yes, doctor, in the part of Marx,
Yeah.
I didn't understand we should depend on the historical development, or we shouldn't, because sometimes it will mislead us. I can't get this.
The behavioral scientists, they don't believe they introduce this ahistorical knowledge, but post-behavioralism and other political sciences, they can take, you know, history into their account.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
So we can speak of like mainstream in political science. It was like behavioral, and I'm not sure about the way they can examine this through like the publications. But now they actually overcome this methodological divide, quantitative and qualitative, and they do mixed methods in order to, still they have some issues with conducting some sort of historical or comparative historical analysis, as we're going to explain this in some detail with in the week on structuralism. But again, they do believe, like some political scientists, they do believe in some historical, in studying or examining some historical phenomenon. But the thing is, the main issue or the main topic is this kind of mainstream with disagreement between political scientists. And this introduced some metaphors about how political scientists as a can we speak of political scientists as a community, or this produced some sort of metaphor of separate tables that people from different methodological beliefs and different ideological predispositions they set in separate tables. So Almond introduced this metaphor of separate tables, and then I can explain what do I mean by the Messy Center and pluralism, methodological pluralism shortly. So here, so according to Almond here, the separate table thing, so political scientists are divided along or the ideological orientations and methodological tools or methodological orientations as well. So for when it comes to methodology, you can have like hard science and soft science. And for the ideology, you have left and right. And so you can speak of hard left with this Marxist tradition and the Marxist theory and dependency and the third world theory, and in order to avoid or to fend off, or to prevent any kind of accusation of being unprofessional or non-scientific, so they deploy scientific tools in order to reach this general law, and they studied like some sort of like a social and political phenomenon that talk like some sort of regularity and the pattern form, and they deploy hard methodological tools in order to be professional and scientific. And then the hard right, this is like the hardcore behavioral proponents that they do deploy quantitative methods and statistical analysis with the mathematical game theoretical models and experimental and computer simulation models. And then when it comes to the soft methodological tools, you have some like culturalist and critical political theorists that they don't really bother about conceptualization and theorization and generating testing or tested hypothesis or hypothesis to be subject to empirical test. And then with the soft right, you have a wide range of conservative and neoconservative proponents of text analysis. I'll explain in some detail all of these four tables or four groups. So for the soft left, as I mentioned, if you do care about, Sandinista in Nicaragua, so you may write a book or conduct a research in order to examine their leadership. There is a work by Wokman that tried to understand Zapata as a prominent figure in the Mexican Revolution. It was just like a descriptive work, a bio regarding, the prominent figure in the revolution. So it was like a narrative, a kind of a storytelling about the role of the leadership in this revolution, and it lacked any sort of conceptualization or theory building or hypothesis testing, but it had some sort of policy theoretical implications. As I mentioned, you might be interested in how ideology would help particular revolutionary groups to attract more or to recruit more supporters in order to sustain their insurgency or their armed struggle in particular countries. So this is soft left. It's too much kind of a storytelling or narrative description, and this is some sort of related to Frankfurt School as well, that they don't believe in this objectivity and impartiality and the separation between knowledge and action. So there is no kind of separation between knowledge and action, and they emanated from the Marxist tradition, and they tried to use this dialectical approach in studying society and understanding history in its totality without deploying any kind of quantitative or hard methodological tools in order to avoid any accusation of being non-scientific. So they had their own treatment of history, and they had, let me finish the table and then I'll take your questions. And then you have another treatment of historical development. So you need to understand instead of focusing on the historical development of democratic institutions, like the separation of power between the executive and the legislature, for example, you need to understand the actual reality of democratic politics. So some studies focused on how politics boil down to some disarticulated elites that they formed some sort of interest and issue networks that precluded the promulgation of or the making of effective public policy. So instead of, they continued their attack on this professionality or how to make political scientists as a professional ones, and they developed some sort of commitment to improving society or like making more effective public policies, and studying some sort of informal power centers in order to make a distinction between like what kind of social groups that have kind of de jure power and others that they have like de facto power. And then you have the soft right, that they do care about text or conducting text analysis. It's kind of still soft methodological tools that they don't deploy this kind of hard scientific tools, or they don't deploy like statistical or mathematical tools in order to investigate the subject. So according to this, they rejected any kind of historical. They are ahistorical. They don't care about historical developments or historical change, but and they are traditional in their methodology, and they locate the position. They locate on the right of this political spectrum. So they do care about, if you analyze the old text, the truth actually lies in these texts, and the truth actually transcends, or it holds across time and space and context. By digging deeper into existing text, you can reach the truth and make truthful and produce truthful knowledge. But they don't adopt any kind of hard methodological tools while doing this text analysis, rejecting this historicism and sociology of knowledge. And then hard left, they actually still from the Marxist tradition, but they deploy, they actually refuse to buy into this anti-professionalism of the left, and they decided to subject their ideological and leftist beliefs and ideals and ideologies in order to generate hypotheses, and these hypotheses will subject to some empirical test. Like the proponents of dependency theory, I'm going to explain this, I think, in the last, not the last week, the one before, when I talk about state and market. And then the hard right, as I mentioned, this is like the ultra professional at their methodological levels. They deploy these kind of methodological statistical methods and tools in order to, and they had this kind of, I'm not sure, but it's somehow like inferior. They look at this kind of descriptive and soft historical studies as kind of inferior and unprofessional to this kind of level of professionalism and scientific knowledge. So as we're going to see, not the next week, the one after, when we study like rational choice, how they address some issues regarding voting behavior, decision making, the public policy making, the formation or the building of coalition and decision making, and it actually builds on how self-interested or self-interest agency actually makes rational choice based on maximizing benefits and minimizing costs. How to utilize, how actually to maximize your utility and to minimize your cost as a rational actor. And then you can generate hypotheses like, if you need to maximize votes as a political party, this is your as an actor, as a political party, you need to maximize, attract voters and maximize votes to have like a large number of seats in the Congress or in the Parliament. How to position yourself in order to attract more voters as a rational behavior. And then from the criticism, they received because of I'll explain this in some details, but for now, it's kind of bounded rationality and some cognitive elements and cultural elements as well, like would motivate or would govern your behavior and your perception about your role in society that might be or might sound or appear as irrational behavior. So you are, as an actor, your action as an agency, your action is embedded in some sort of duties. So you pay attention to your duties and role and rules as well, and your obligations. And like the neo-institutionalism or rational choice institutionalism pays attention to this rules ones. Okay, any question?
Yes, doctor, I'm sorry for interruption.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is the most what you say lectures is exist in the book or not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I cover all the material, even the recommended, okay?
Okay. Okay,
yeah,
doctor, thank you.
Yeah. But as I mentioned, the recommended is kind of bonus, but you need to understand the lecture, okay? Okay. So in reality, so the separation is...
Doctor, excuse me for the interruption.
Yeah?
Our main source for studying are the Zoom lectures and the book?
Yeah, guys, the contract between us is the syllabus, okay? So every week you have a list of readings, required ones and recommended ones, okay?
Okay.
I can add, you know, some from, like, you don't have like the exact, like, it's not like I memorize, you know, the books and the material I deliver in lectures. So it's here I explain and I simplify some issues, okay?
Okay.
But it's more or less all like do exist in the readings, you know, I listed in the outline. Okay.
Okay. The readings that we get from the printing house beside the faculty?
It's the one on no. You have the digital sources will be available on Moodle, and then Blackboard when you all like don't have a problem with enrolling in the having like account or accessing the course on Blackboard, and then you have like some hard copies. The one I wrote next to them on reserve, okay? The one on reserve, even the recommended, by the way, I left at al-Matba'a, okay?
Okay, thank you.
But the outline is essential, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So here, the separation between different political scientists, like the separation is real, but it's not that rigid or neat in reality, because effectively the vast majority of political scientists, or like the majority of political scientists, actually almost all political scientists or comparativists actually, they locate themselves in this, what Almond mentioned, the great cafeteria of the center, or the messy center of interpreting or examining or explaining social and political issues. What does this mean? That you are not like strictly leftist or adopting this hard and statistical methodological tools. As a political scientist, you are the majority of political scientists, they are liberal in their ideological beliefs or ideological predispositions, and they are open to use different kind of methodological tools as well. So that's why they are like this is the great cafeteria of the center and the messy center, because they deploy different methodological tools, and they don't have this kind of strict, ideological divisions that would direct the way of conducting research and producing knowledge. So the separation actually is it's something like you can really and with a confidence kind of you can speak of, but this kind of division, ideological and methodological divisions, are way too complex than this kind of separate table metaphor. So as I mentioned, this is the great cafeteria of the center. And to be sure, how much time we have?
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, because you have another lecture after that, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So next lecture, I'm going to talk about before we actually examine in some detail or explain in some detail the three major theoretical schools, rational choice, culturalism, and structuralism, and then neo-institutionalism as a hybrid tradition. I'm gonna go through like early approaches in comparative politics field that they try to reach like this general to produce this kind of scientific knowledge in order to
Doctor,
to approach it, this general law. Yeah?
Doctor, is this recorded lecture? You will send it us to
Guys, you all you all have access to Moodle, right?
The Moodle. Okay, خلاص.
Yeah, I posted because of the size. I cannot upload the entire lecture, but perhaps on Blackboard I'll be able to do that. So that's why I post a link so you can download the lecture, the MP4 video at Google Drive. So I post a link, to Google Drive, and you can download the lecture from that link.
طب another question يا دكتور، انا اسفه معلش. البلاك بورد دوت انا شخصيا حاولت اعمل عليه يعني امبارح، ولقيت فيه عقبات كده، يعني ما تحلش الموضوع معايا في
I think all of you.
عشان
I think the IT. Yeah, the IT, but they are quite busy right now. So you can email them in order to make this enrollment much easier for you.
Okay, doctor, thank you.
Okay, so next lecture, next week, actually, I'm going to cover some methodological issues, and I'll cover some early approaches, mainly Easton's and system analysis and structural functionalism as like that they were kind of the mainstream approaches in political science in the mid 20th century. Okay?
Doctor, I'm sorry, one last question. Are these slides are going to be uploaded to the Moodle?
You need the slides without the video?
We need the slides.
Okay, I can do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so next time I'm gonna like sort out the camera thing, and like the only way of communication is through like Moodle, and then let's hope like next week or a week after on Blackboard. And meanwhile, if you have any question, just drop me a line.
Doctor.
Yeah.
The course name Comparative Politics Group 2 on the Moodle.
It's not Group 2.
So what's the name?
I'm going
I couldn't find it.
Yeah, it's like abbreviate. I used like comps, theories of comps.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to email you all the name of the course in order to make sure that you just did registration in the right one.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any questions so far, guys? Yeah, okay. So that's all for today, and see you next week, inshallah. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.